Kuşak ve Yol Girişimi'nin en önemli bacaklarından bir tanesini finansman oluşturuyor. Elbette girişim kapsamında yapılacak olan projelerde alternatif finansman imkanları yaratılabilir mi? Yaratılabilecek olan bu finansal imkanlar hangi ürünlerle çeşitlendirilebilir? Temel faktörlerden bir tanesi. Aynı zamanda şeffaflık ve ihale süreçlerinin ne şekilde yönetilmesi gerektiğini de değerlendirmeye çalışacağız bu oturumumuzda. Moderatörümüz EBRD Türkiye Altyapı Enerji Doğal Kaynaklar Ülke Başkan Vekili Sayın Şule Topçu Kılıç. Aynı zamanda panelistlerimiz Tekfen Holding Taahhüt Grubu Başkan Yardımcısı Sayın Gürbüz Alp Kireç, Power China International Group Limited Genel Müdür Yardımcısı Sion Lee Sin, BTE Grup Bölge Direktörü Sayın Tunca Ataoğlu, Fidan ve Fidan Hukuk Bürosu kurucu ortağı Sayın Erdoğan Fidan olacak. Sözü size bırakıyoruz. Buyurun.
Çok teşekkürler. Öncelikle ben TÜSİAD'a ve BRICA yetkililerine çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Bence hem zamanlama olarak hem de konu itibariyle çok önemli bir konu. EBRD olarak da bizim aktif olarak desteklediğimiz ve üzerinde çeşitli alternatif finansman teknikleri geliştirmeye çalıştığımız bir alan. Belt Road deyince aklımıza aslında gelen şey bütün bu İpek Yolu hattı üstündeki altyapı ve insanların karşılıklı alışverişlerini, ticaretlerini, yaşamlarını sürdürmeye yönelik yapılacak her türlü facility ve bunların oluşturulması olarak görüyoruz. Ben konuşmama Türkçe olarak başladım ama aslında İngilizce olarak mı devam etsem diye düşünmeden de demiyorum. Benden önceki panel Türkçe başladığı için otomatik öyle ben de devam ettim ama müsaade ederseniz bundan sonra İngilizceye döneyim. Çünkü misafirimiz de var, belki onun açısından da daha kolay olacaktır. If I switch to English, as EBRD, I mean, maybe very briefly, as EBRD, we are active in the whole Belt Road geography, including the Central Asia, Turkey, Mogolistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and all these istans. And China, last year, became EBRD's shareholder. And since then, this Belt Road initiative and how EBRD can contribute and support the initiative become even more important. As you maybe also know, in G20 discussions, this become also a very hot topic. But everything at the end comes to investment and financing. Because to make this initiative work for all countries, there are certain investments to be made, and especially infrastructure investments to be made in various different areas: transportation, superstructure, underground structure, logistics, energy, and all different areas, so that the trade and commerce become more sustainable and doable. But to make all these investments means money. This means financing. And our subject today is EPC. Why EPC? I think, of course, if you want to do all these investments, we need to have structures to make the financing possible. And EPC, which is engineering, procurement, and construction, is the best way to control the timing, the cost, and delivery of all these investments. So, when we are talking any infrastructure project, we cannot talk of such project without talking about the EPC arrangements. Today, together with our panelists, we will be focusing on this area, and especially we would like to focus on why EPC is important for the good financing structures and why the various alternative models EPC is a very important leg. And we have here are panels from the construction sector as well as the technical and legal advisory and also the operator side to cover this area. My first question would be to Gürbüz Bey. I mean, you are a very active construction company, as well as I'm calling you as infrastructure company, actually. You have done many large projects with your EPC arrangements. And would you tell us how you think a Belt Road initiative project can be undertaken with the involvement of multinational companies and local stakeholders, and what would be the role of each of the stakeholders in that respect?
Well, BRI initiative, actually, the Belt and Road Initiative, presents vast opportunities for many companies in many institutions. As you said, the building block actually at the end of the day boils down to financing. EPC financing, EPC projects, or I don't know whether we should also mention PPP projects as well, are just some models to conduct certain projects, mainly keeping in sight the financing of the projects. Actually, there are certain differences between EPC and PPP projects, or if you look at it from a certain angle, EPC projects may be part of PPP projects, but as you said, at the end of the day, it all boils down to financing model, and how you collect your revenues at the end of the either contracting period or the concession period. These are similar but different, I should say, models. At the end of the day, they all formed to conduct certain relatively larger projects, which need financing through certain financing institutions, be it public or financing institutions. In it, there might be, as a part of the government financing, public financing, and financing institutions, there could be also in this local banking facilities, which might bring some flavor or some advantage to the whole picture.
Okay, thank you. As you said, I mean, PPP is different, and EPC arrangements are also generally a big and important part of the PPPs. But before maybe we start the PPP side, which I would like to cover it more on the second part of our panel. At this moment, I want to focus more on the EPC side of the whole arrangement. And EPC is a delivery method for a greenfield project. And generally, these projects are large projects, large infrastructure projects. Generally, they have a lot of complications together with it. And generally, it takes longer period of time. We are talking minimum 3-4 years of construction period projects. Generally, they are done in large sites, which involves a big number of workers. Time and delivery very important, and because there is also public side involvement in it, cost has to be always under control. Managing costs together with the time is very critical for the EPC arrangement. So what I want to ask to Mr. Lixin, as Power China Vice General Manager, maybe it would be great if you can give us some insight from Chinese government point of view. how Chinese government is planning to finance these EPC projects to support the Belt Road Initiative, and what kind of role which we can expect to have from the Chinese banks.
非常的感谢峰会组织，安排我来作为中国电建的一个代表参加本组的一个讨论。中国电建呢，应该说是作为世界500强排名182位的中国央企，这个主营业务呢就是能源电力、基础设施和水务水环境的这些领域，就是我们和中国的其他的企业一样呢，也是在积极的参与这个“一带一路”沿线的国家的这些基础设施的建设。应该说，中国政府呢，在这个“一带一路” EPC 项目的融资方面，主要有这么几个方面。第一个，我认为是占相当大的比例，那么就是针对政府间的合作，它提供的是两优贷款。这两优呢，主要是concessional loan and preferential buyer's credit， 就这两种类型的，属于 G2G 的性质，属于 G2G 的这种性质，这个应该说占的比例还是比较大。那么在沿线，作为中国电建，实际上也是既是参与，也是享受了这个相应的政策的优惠。包括我们现在正在建的孟加拉的达什尔甘地水厂，这个大概2.8亿美元的这么一个项目，这是通过就是两优的项目，这是一种。第二种呢，就是通过这个亚投行以及呢丝路基金，以及呢这个中国的一些商业银行来做商业贷款。商业贷款，这个往往呢这个要有中信保这些方面的一些就 Simon Shaw 的这些相应的进出口的这个商业保险，有这方面的一些要求。还有第三种呢，实际上是中国企业，应该说现在“一带一路”沿线的这些国家，应该说呈现了相当好的一个活力和相当好的一个机会。因此呢，我们中国的企业国家也是在鼓励我们中国企业针对自己的一些主业进行投资。那么呢，就是企业自己以自己的资本金，然后从银行再融资再来投资，这种方式应该说这个比例也比较大。比如说中国电建，我们就在巴基斯坦、在老挝，这些国家，下一步可能我们还会到波兰，甚至比较好的话也会到土耳其来投资，当它的经济指标满足企业的发展的需求的情况下。因此呢，这三大类是比较就是为主要的。中资银行呢，应该说是在践行“一带一路”的倡议的过程中呢，应该说发挥的作用越来越大。中资银行呢，在拓展海外业务的同时呢，不断加强呢就是国际合作模式上的这些创新。这个模式呢就有很多，比如说我们刚才谈到的这个融资的方式，在贷款的时候，你可以是两优贷款加上商贷，甚至还可以广泛的和第三国进行合作。比如说我们说的巴基斯坦的项目，我们就占了51%，对方占了49%，我们控股来进行投资，就是这是一个。另外呢，同时呢，就是通过这种融合吧，我们呢就是和国际的这个多边的开发机构和外资的银行进行合作，推动“一带一路”的金融服务。另外呢，就是说建立了银行机构之间有效的沟通的协调机制。因为通过“一带一路”，不仅仅是编织了这么一个就是编织了一个合作的网络，其实更多的像这个 BRICA 一样，我们搭建了一个合作的一个平台，使得很多的银行包括企业之间，它能够有合作的这种机会，创造了这样的机会，培育了综合的各种就是金融服务。好，谢谢。
Evet, I think the governments will always have a very important role in supporting this project, and we know that Chinese government is, from that point of view, is very also active, and actually by providing either soft loans or by ECA loans, they are supporting the projects. And of course, I mean, having the public financing to support these EPC arrangements and large infrastructure projects is one way. But one thing which is clear, first, public financing has limitations. Governments need to control their budgets. They cannot really have an unlimited way of public financing because it will be a big burden on the government budget. And governments have to consider different ways of models in order to make sure that first, private sector get involved for the development of such large projects, and second, the burden on the public budget is reduced or somehow spread it to other parties, other stakeholders. So when I mention this, the first thing which comes to mind is PPPs and BOT models. And most of you who have been already active in the construction sector is fully aware that actually Turkey, from that point of view, is a very important role model. Why I'm saying this? Turkey used the PPP BOT model in the very successful manner in order to achieve very large infrastructure projects in Turkey. I can give some examples like Eurasia Tunnel, the third bridge, Gebze-İzmir Bridge, and I mean, at the moment, there is also construction of Dardanelles Bridge, and each of these projects are multi-billion-dollar projects. There has been also PPP model developed in Turkey for the hospital healthcare infrastructure projects recently, and now there are very large hospital projects which is at the moment constructed under EPC arrangement by using the PPP model in a very successful manner. I'm proud of this as a Turkish person, and I'm saying this because at the moment we are using the Turkey case as a success case and as a role model for all the other countries which we are operating. To give one example is Kazakhstan. Yesterday, our president also mentioned Almaty Ring Road project, which is the first example of PPP model implementation in Kazakhstan, which took the sample of Turkey as the case in order to develop. Now they are working on also PPP hospital healthcare infrastructure projects with the similar model. And I have Tuncay and Erdoğan now, and why they are especially important. First, with Tuncay, right now we are working a number of PPP projects, and all of them are in their construction phase. All of them we have EPC arrangements with our contractors, and EBRD and other commercial and international and Turkish banks are on the financing side of it, and we want to make sure as the financing parties that first of all, each of these projects have, say, 3-year construction period at the minimum. And the sizes are, I'm talking about like 1,000 bed capacity, 2,000 bed capacity, large hospital projects. And what is important is that these projects are delivered on time, and there is no cost overrun, and the service of the project can start on time. This is very important for any kind of infrastructure project. And for lenders, this is very important because we want to make sure that the construction finishes on time and debt service can be made on time so that there is no default, no issues with the debt service. So Tuncay has a very important role there because as technical advisor of the lenders, he needs to make sure that the construction is going according to program and there is no cost overrun. And he's our eyes, ears, and checking every little steps of the construction. I mean, Tuncay, can you tell us a little bit of your experience, how you see the PPP model implementation in the EPC based on all your Turkey experience and healthcare PPP projects?
Sure. Thanks very much. Actually, it's interesting that this came up here, and these projects are quite challenging projects, yet happy and happy projects as well. Where, as Shirley mentioned, these are all on time, on budget, and all of the stakeholders, including the developers, the lenders, the EPC, and ultimately a number of these projects are under operations. And we are also doing operations and maintenance duration monitoring, where we have a first-hand information of how happy is the public and how well these projects are run to provide the intended services for the public. A little bit about BTY. Quickly, we are one of the world's leading technical advisory firms. We have offices in across the globe, and I will tie this discussion to the Belt and Road Initiative. And the underlying message since the start of the conversation here yesterday has been that this initiative is actually more than the roads, the connecting conveyance activity, but it's all about also the cultural, technological, and regional development, and it has far-reaching effects than just between, more than being a corridor between China and Europe. A good example is our presence here, probably because BTY is a Canadian company. 4 years back, I came to Istanbul and we had meetings. We started BTY and in Ankara at that time. And being a Canadian company, it ties to your just most recent comment there. We are now providing advisory services in Kazakhstan with our Turkish office, which jointly works with our Canadian and UK and European offices. So we basically built this center of excellence around the Turkish experience, and now are able to provide these services predominantly using local resources, plus supported by obvious training and all that kind of capacity building. Capacity building is quite important. And we are also able to provide advisory level services, which is quite important because I'm going to get to that now, that especially when we talk about PPPs, the authority level, ministry level involvement are quite important. And they're basically the approach to public-private partnership is that it takes quite a while for the government to understand that they're in a partnership, and they become a first-hand shareholder of the actual project company, although maybe not on paper, but it's a joint effort. So the tendering processes and everything else is quite important. I'll just maybe, because the conversation here ties to the opportunities of the PPP setting and the BRI, there has been a lot of projects discussed. There are a lot of numbers thrown out there. The overall investment here is about 1 trillion. Some say 1.7, 2 trillions, up to 2 trillions. And Turkey has done this, has already started this, building the transportation, and all the networks have spent hundreds of billions of dollars under maybe 100 different concessions. But even now, there are more to go, even just for Turkey. And we are looking at all the Central Asian countries. One of the other speakers was saying the foreign investment or foreign lender money was only at about 20 or 30%. So, and there are certain reasons for that. One of them is the procurement strategy. Lenders like stability. They would like to be able to see connectivity. They would like the clear view of what's happening, not only on technical terms, but legal and financial and all that, but on the technical, there are certain bridges, the gaps to bridge, and I believe the majority of that, boils down to planning, a good planning, and a clear vision of the governments help with transparency. That helps with competitive, bidding. And when there is competitive bidding, you have better financing, you have better price for your money, and your value for money analysis works out, and everything becomes more long-term than just generating some short-term work for just the construction industry. So in a nutshell, I guess the idea is that the PPP sector that is developed in Turkey is going to have an impact on the road and the Belt and Road Initiative. There's going to be some challenges around this. One of them is going to be the financing, and the connectivity is quite important. There are certain issues that we can foresee in the Belt and Road, certain issues with technical issues like, road safety. Which road safety standards are going to be applied? I mean, I think lenders are going to start asking these questions to us. Even on rail, the gauges of rail, is that going to be continuous, or the trains have to be changed in between as they cross borders? There will definitely be probably legal implications, customs implications. All these implications will have to be figured out. But I think there is enough in us specialism around the table to resolve all these. And one more final comment is that we see, so far we have seen a lot of Chinese investment. We know China has been spearheading the effort, and they provided up to $200 billion of financing, and the Chinese companies are really hard to compete with. They have contracts in the range of $200 billion. But now with the Kazakhstan, the Bakat Road project, we now see EBRD there, Islamic Development Bank, all the development banks are coming onto the play, which again helps the governments, increase their competitive advantage in bringing more internationals, more, companies from overseas, and also hot money inflow.
Thank you, Tunca. As you said, transparency and procurement is very important for the successful completion and implementation of these projects. And from that point of view, how governments are organizing this procurement tenders to select the EPC contractor becomes really important. With Erdogan, actually, we spent really hours, but a very long working hours together to support the development of the PPP and BOT model in Turkey. And I think the very first ones are back in 1996. Maybe our ages will become more obvious now, but in Turkey, since the very first BOT implementation was started back in 1996 with the energy projects and airport projects. Of course, those structures were more simplified, and over the years it has been developed to come to current bankable stage of the PPP BOT model in Turkey, which is a role model for the countries of the Belt and Road Initiative as well. And together with Erdogan, we had to not only work on the EPC contracts, but before starting that, we had to work on the tender documents, which needs to be published by the government authorities, and we need to work on the draft project agreements, which needs to be signed between the authorities and the project companies. And this was very important. And all the bankability matters there needed to be very clearly defined so that we can have a healthy EPC arrangement for the construction period and sustainable process for the operational period. And there, Erdogan played a very key role, I need to say, and I'm accepting myself as a student of him, although I'm not a lawyer, although I'm an engineer. Erdogan, can you please explain us why the bankability of the tender documents and project agreements are important in order to have a good EPC structure? And what are the important bankability matters which needs to be covered under the EPC contracts?
Shilham, thank you very much for the compliments as well. The most bankable issue in an EPC contract is the project itself. If there is a well-structured project, you can reflect that into the EPC contract easily. And if there's a well-structured project, it will in any case be bankable. In the projects we have worked with you, the administration permitted us to opine on the project documentation and tender documentation, and we had the opportunity to put instruments that we will want to see in the EPC arrangements and financing arrangements in the tender documentation as well as in the project documentation. And it made better position for the project from the bankability perspective. And as you well know, you are not a lawyer, but you are more than a lawyer, I should say that. While we begin to draft an EPC contract, first we review the tender documentation, project documentation, whether it's a project agreement, concession agreement, or implementation contract. And this also includes tender documentation. And we understand the project first. And then we take support from the technical advisors, from EPC contractors team, as well as insurance team. When they all come together, it makes the project for us. We understand and digest the project, and then we reflect the provisions of the project into the EPC contract itself, because they are all integrated. You cannot segregate the project itself from the EPC contract or the project agreement from the EPC contract. They are all together. And O&M will also join to that bundle. So when you are drafting those contracts, you should see the project in a big picture. So you know the actors, you know where to put where, and if there is any problem, it affects the O&M, it affects the project agreement, and it affects the relation of the SPV with the administration. So you should well organize them all, and while drafting the EPC contracts, you have always been involved and you like reading those documents, and it's very helpful. And in the market, now we have well-developed EPC contracts, and some tendering authorities are also using the same forms. So it's progressing somehow. And if you let me, I can say something about what's the most bankability issues that should be available in an EPC contract. I took some notes about it. In full legal perspective, in the EPC contract, we first, and in addition to the project itself, we look to the identity of the EPC contractor, whether it's a GV or a company, joint and several liabilities, anything arising from their origin countries, and if the project has different mechanics, like if it's a Belt and Road project, I'm sure there will be something coming from Chinese or other Belt and Road companies, countries. And the scope and the works should be well described in the agreement. So they should know what they should do. That's for the EPC contractor as well as the SPV. And everything should come from the project documentation. So whatever the SPV owes to the government, to the tendering authority, it should back-to-back have those rights and obligations against the EPC contractor. So SPV will not keep anything on its shoulder. Everything will go to the EPC contractor in terms of the construction obligations. And we are having issues in relation to permitting, licensing, and it includes zoning plans. At the very beginning, technical guys are going and checking those, whether they are all properly managed, but we also put those provisions into the EPC contract so that our SPV is not liable for those kind of things. And there are bonding requirements, which is advance payment bond, performance bond, and on the site security is important. We don't want the SPV to have liability for any damage that may be given to third parties as well as other contractors' personnel. There may be variations arising from the project itself, so we insert provisions related thereto, and liability periods, defects liability periods, limitation of liability and penalties attached thereto, they should all be in the international standards. Because if you want these contracts bankable, you should give what the lenders and the international investors are looking for. And subcontracting is also one of the important issues. And at the tendering level, we are putting relevant provisions into the project documentation, even in the tender documentation, in order to permit the EPC contractor to use subcontractors. And if there is an employment matters, depending on the legislation in place at the time, we are putting some protections in favor of the SPV and the project. And as Tunca Bey said, equipment procurement is very important. We are also putting provisions related thereto. It includes the custom obligations, clearances, taxes, incentives, and erection testing of the equipment procured, as well as guarantees related thereto. If they are not set out in the project documentation, sometimes in the project document, the government asks for 1-year guarantees, but we ask normally more than 1, 2, or 3 years, depending on the structure of the project. And payments is very important, payments to the EPC contractor, because it's linked to the financing arrangements. You should arrange your financing accordingly, and you should arrange your payments to the EPC contractor accordingly. Normally, there are advance payments paid to the EPC contractor, and it's repaid through deductions or reductions from the progress payments. And if the EPC price is not agreed in foreign currency, it may be some indexation mechanics set out therein. There may be variation payments and invoicing. They are all important. We are doing something, but everything should be in line with the applicable regulations. And material adverse change and effect provisions we are putting there. And completion, if there is phasing, we are saying what kind of or how many phases there will be and what will be the commissioning procedures and requirements. And parallel entitlement. That's a very important issue in terms of the PPP projects. So whatever the SPV is taking from the government, it can give it to the EPC. If the SPV does not get anything, any time extension or whatever from the tendering authority, it should not give it to the EPC contractor. That's the arrangement we are putting in the EPC contract. Otherwise, there is a deadlock situation. SPV cannot take anything from the lenders nor from the tendering authorities, but then EPC is following up the SPV and it affects the project. And the last thing is the governing law. There are developments in Turkish law, and we are using Turkish law in most of the EPC projects, but in some projects, the lenders and international advisors and investors prefer English law and English courts. That's, I don't like it, but I mean, this is the international environment. Whatever they want, you have to put those.
Yeah.
And dispute resolution provisions are important. There was another session in the morning today discussing those issues. We don't like, in project finance, we don't like the EPC and SPV going to the court all the time, and we don't want, or we don't put any initiative into documentation to let them go to the court or arbitration for any kind of problem. We are saying that you should be in contact all the time. There should be some committees established thereunder, and there should be an expert mediation process. So if there is any conflict, you should try to solve that without going to the court. Because if you go to the court, there should be reporting obligations to the administration, to the lenders. It may block the process. And independent technical certifier is also important in terms of some, especially in the commissioning part, we are also putting those.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, of course, I mean, these EPC contracts are very huge documents, and like it's an encyclopedia, and it's like 300, 400 page documents. And of course, why it is so detailed and it needs to be so well drafted, because as said, construction is a complicated activity and there are a lot of risks involved. I want to bring the subject more to practicality. I mean, Tekfen is one of the very successful construction companies who have taken the role of EPC contractor in various public projects, and who have been also involved as investor and PPP investor of a PPP BOT project. So as Tekfen, you already have the experience of both sides. Of course, having the pure EPC arrangement and having the boss or the contracting entity as being the public versus having the PPP arrangement where your bosses are actually the SPV and the lenders who finance the project has different pros and cons. Can you tell us what are the good things and bad things of each of these arrangements, or is it EPC or PPP?
Okay. Well, of course, they have pros and cons. It depends on the project, it depends on the financial availability of the time, the cost of money. For instance, if you look at it, if if you look at it from a wide angle, it's a matter of economic conditions problem. The long-term financial closure, the long-term financing coupled with the PPP projects, if that is difficult to achieve, which in certain cases financial closure takes longer time, then EPC projects might be a more preferable solution. If, on the other hand, on the PPP projects, the initial money that is put forward is relatively smaller. And the revenue is obtained at the end of the concession period. Whereas this puts the interest rates higher. So as you can see, there is a
Pros and cons for
pros
both.
and cons for both. And as I said, it all maybe to a certain extent depends on the availability of the money. Today, would an EPC go or a PPP model go? EPC looks more at the moment maybe a lucky side of it, because at the end of the contract, actually, the lenders will collect their revenues, the project is completed, as it is very rightly said, it should be completed on time and successfully. But if there are financial conditions are appropriately in place, then in that case, PPP would be a more advisable solution. So again, it's a matter of judging the economical conditions.
Yeah, yeah, and you are very right. And there are projects which EPC is more suitable, while there are certain projects where PPP model definitely needs to be chosen as the best way of making such arrangements. Chinese institutions will play a very important role in the realization of Belt Road Initiative and all this connection and interconnectivity in all the countries. We see that Chinese institutions, Chinese government, Chinese ECA and Chinese banks are being very active in that respect and take really very active role in the financing of these projects. And not only just financing, we see that they also provide some risk guarantees in that respect. Can you give us a little bit of more insight how you think the Belt Road Initiative may help the multinational companies to take part in as a private investor in this kind of projects when there is risk guaranteed with the Chinese institutions?
好，这个呢应该说是所有的在做这个 FEPC， 我们说是跟有融资相关的这样的 EPC 项目。现在呢，应该说这种在我们遇到的很多的项目，就是说业主想做项目，但是他的资金不够，很多时候呢需要承包商来给他提供一定的支持。那么在这方面的话呢，就是应该说中国政府在“一带一路”倡议下呢，应该说提供了很多的这方面的一些优惠的政策和条件。其中谈到这个风险呢，应该说大家实际上最终的是聚焦，那么就是中国国有的一个政策性的保险公司，涉及到的就是中国的出口信用保险公司，主要是这个塞诺秀，可能应该说包括土耳其，包括我们其他的最近我们因为为了适应这个“一带一路”，作为中国电建已经把欧亚区域总部已经搬到了伊斯坦布尔，已经1年多了。我们在和很多的土耳其的公司在交流的过程中，都涉及到了这个信保的问题。 因为这个信保的问题直接关系到怎么样协助业主去获得相应的这个中国的有一定优惠政策的资金。这个工作往往还是很有挑战性。那么呢，作为中国信保在应该说17年这个全年，就是实际上它积极的支持企业面向这个“一带一路”沿线的这个国家的出口啊、投资啊、工程承包业务，累计承保的金额已经达到了我这边有个统计哈，就是有1298亿美元，同比增长了15%。其中呢，国家的一些重大的项目有76个，承保金额呢达到了360亿美元。如果跨国公司想作为私人投资者参与中国信保承保的这些项目，基本的立足点在于呢，就是说要有一定的中国成分，因为中国成分，这些要求呢，如果说是机电产品的项目，成套设备的这些设备呢，出口率呢，就是中国成分的不低于60%，船舶类不低于40%，工程承包类不低于35%。因此呢，就是建议啊，跨国企业，包括土耳其的企业，在多与呢中资企业进行合作，这样的话呢，以满足这个信保的一些门槛的这种要求。这个是就是机构的这种风险哈，这投保的项目。目前呢，许多的中信保项目呢，就是应该说有很多的跨国企业共同，就是和中国公司共同参与。刚才我谈到的就是中国电建在巴基斯坦做了一个卡西姆项目，这个项目呢有22亿多美元。这个项目呢就是和私营企业一起共同，现在已经发电了。再就是我们做的风电项目也是同样的，和当地公司，因为和当地公司其实作为中国企业也很愿意和当地公司合作，可以少走很多弯路。因为这个作为“一带一路”沿线的这些国家在承担这些业务的时候，一定是要和他的国家的需求战略跟它相匹配、相对接。这样的话呢，会获得更多的支持。同时呢，要对当地的法律，还有呢就是甚至一些标准、一些习俗，更多的了解。因此呢，就是说可以使得大家的这种合作少走很多弯路。这样的话呢，就是这些方面呢，作为中国电建在推进此类项目方面呢，应该说有比较丰富的这个经验。截止到这个今年的这个7月 ，Power China 呢，在这个“一带一路”沿线呢，有65个重点在65个重点国家中，有46个国家，有160个境外机构执行的1472个这样的工程合同。合同总额达到800多亿美元，在沿线的6个国家呢，我们还实施投资了14个项目。这投资的这些项目都有当地成分，所以说业务领域呢，这主要是包含的这个能源啊、基础设施。因此呢，我们也非常希望哈，就是因为通过这些实践吧，应该说呢，我们呢就是作为中国电建呢，也有相应丰富的这个经验以及呢专业团队，就是说和中国的机构啊，这个风险担保方面的这些，不管是和政府还是和相应的这个保险机构，期待呢，我们呢也希望呢有合作意愿的跨国企业吧，和他们开展这个互利共赢的合作。好 ，Thank you very much.
I thank you very much. And actually, yes, you mentioned a very important subject. And I believe that, Turkey has very strong construction companies with very good experience in all different areas of infrastructure. China has the same. And two strong parties together, I think, can be very important player to facilitate and to make the realization of the Belt Road Initiative investments. So I see that there is a very important role to both of the country players in that respect, and I hope to see many fruitful joint ventures and cooperations between the Turkish companies and Chinese companies in that respect. One thing I can give as a kind of wish, in Turkish companies side, we have very good know-how of PPPs and BOTs. And you have the very good know-how and very good financing tools. And when we combine these two, I believe there can be very fruitful results out of it. So we are looking forward to seeing such examples of cooperations and joint ventures for this very important investment projects. Now, I'd like to ask Tuncay. I mean, we were talking EPC, we were talking PPP, and I'm sure some of our guests may say, how will it be decided whether to choose EPC or PPP? And you mentioned a little bit about the value for money, and that is a very important tool for a government institution to decide whether to choose pure procurement, which is the EPC arrangement, or PPP. And of course, when we talk also the Belt Road Initiative, I mean, to choose the method is one thing, but when you use the EPC or PPP, the laws, arbitration, all different various other dynamics need to be considered together with it. So can you please a little bit elaborate us from that point of view, what is the criteria to select EPC versus PPP?
Okay, thank you. So I will first connect this discussion with Gürbüz Bey just mentioned there are pros and cons in selecting, which way to go, how to bring things together. Then Erdoğan Bey also mentioned it's quite straightforward to set up an EPC contract if the plan is known, because then you can clearly lay out what the requirements would be. I'll just add one more thing to that, the need for the project. So I think a project is a project because, a good project is a project because it's needed to start with. And a project does not always have to be a profitable project as well. For instance, a very good example of that is the mass transportation projects. In cities, they're predominantly non-profit services, and hospitals. These are just social services or services that the public needs, and the countries who are sponsoring these projects have the means to pay for these. So adding on to what Şule said, there could also be hybrid type of deliveries where we see this more often now especially on the developed, like Western world, where they have the monies and there's a big criticism on certain aspects of private involvement, and the premise of that discussion is that the public thinks their government could actually get loans and debt much in better conditions than the public. However, they also would like to have the certain advantages of using the PPP model, and that goes back to the value for money discussion, where you could involve more innovation, getting private involvement on operation and maintenance, so you have a securer 25 or 20-year the concession term view of the asset. Certain risk-sharing mechanisms make PPP type model a stronger alternative to going directly with the EPC. And there are other things like, there are sometimes those projects where when you make the upfront investment in a quick manner, its return to the public, return to the growth potential of the regions, actually outweighs the cost of financing or cost of having the private involvement or the lender's money in the project. So overall, we have been involved with, well, there are also two types of decision-making process. For instance, even in countries that it may change, like say in Canada, the East and West thinks differently. One of them thinks like a PPP as a financing methodology, whereas the other one thinks of it as a value for money, which means, maybe as an example, if you're saving someone's life, and if that person is your relative, how much money would you like to pay for it? So it may be costing you millions of dollars, but it is saving that person's life. So, and in certain communities, that's why if the funding is not there, the value for money justifies the PPP type deliveries. And similar discussion, I believe, is not very relevant in Turkey. It's probably 95% of the time, PPP is a faster way of doing business. It's a faster way of finding the finances, and it's off balance sheet. So it's good for the governments, certain criteria to meet European Union, etc. But it goes back to the need for the project. I'll just add one more thing here: public perception and the long-term sustainability efforts of environmental, social, or public growth, capacity building. All these kind of actually play a big role on the policy of PPPs. And I think the development banks are doing a good job on that, pushing forward a mandate of not only the investment, but whatever is surrounding that. And then they make their other partners, like the governments and the developers, a part of the same delivery model. So now, for instance, as a result of the PPP program in Turkey, we see because of the development bank involvement or the lender involvement, the living standards of laborers are getting better on site. Used to be tents, now they're like containers. They have like 4 square meters of land, and all that kind of improvements in people's lives. So I think even like for countries like developing countries, I would say, on the emerging markets, I think these are all big considerations to go for the lender's money or the private finance, the developers' involvement, high-level involvement. Yes, it may cost a little bit more sometimes, but good things cost money.
Yeah,
So.
of course. I mean, of course, one of the very important points, which you also mentioned, is that PPP is a good tool of financing, because not every project can be financed with the public finance. I mean, just to look at Turkey, we financed over like $50 billion of infrastructure in Turkey over the last 5 years, only on the infrastructure side. And I was just wondering, if this was only with the public finance, it would be probably impossible to get this all run through. It's not just money, but also it's time, because PPP in a way provides some discipline to finish the projects on time without any time delay. And time is very important, and time cannot be bought by money. And most of these infrastructure projects have certain social benefits which cannot be bought by money either. So all different parameters are important to determine whether PPP or EPC. Of course, there is another very important thing, and I want to keep very short because I know that our time is really running out, and I want to make sure that we are not really missing our time too long. So risk is another very important criteria and parameter for EPC versus PPP. And in the case of pure EPC arrangements, a big amount and big number of risks are still in the shoulders of the public, while only the construction-related certain risks are on the EPC contractor. While in the case of PPPs, there is a kind of risk matrix, and it's a very balanced risk-sharing mechanism between the public versus the contractor. And there are risks which contractor takes, but there are risks which contractor cannot take, which has to be taken by public, and this is a very well-balanced arrangement. Maybe Erdoğan, you can only tell us, I mean, there are many risks, of course, which is shared, but what are the 3 most important risks which are to be taken by the government versus the contractor?
In a straightforward EPC structure, the employer and the construction company, what is being transferred or assumed by the EPC contractor is the contractual and regulatory risks set out in that agreement, as well as arising from the project itself. It's that much simple. But in the PPP structure, it's a full risk transfer from the project company to the EPC contractor on a back-to-back basis, which covers all kinds of procurement, engineering, and construction works. And it also includes direct agreements with the lenders, obligations therefrom, cooperation with the administration representative, lenders representative, and other project parties representatives, interface agreements requirements, bondings, and compensation payables. And these kind of risks are taken by the EPC contractors. But as a response to the previous question, whether it should be an ordinary EPC or PPP. It was one of the first things when we began our discussions with the administration. The beginning point was whether it will be an administrative law contract or private law contract. And you can remember that they said it should be private, and then we requested them to issue a law because it's required under the Turkish constitution. So if it's an administrative law EPC structure, which the government officers likes very much, there are established structures there under, and it's administrative law. They don't take any risk at all. But in the private law structure, that's the PPP. We are sitting in the same table in the corresponding chairs. So we have rights and obligations which are against each other. We have rights, they have rights, we have obligations, they have obligations. So, I mean, in my opinion, PPP structure with the private law is the most bankable and practical
Structure.
for the country.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, actually, when it comes to PPPs and all these EPCs and financing of infrastructure projects, we can talk hours and hours. And there is very good expertise already built in Turkey in that respect, which we believe that it can be very helpful for the realization of investments in the Belt Road initiative as well. So with our panelists, we try to cover all different areas in that respect, whether it is EPC versus PPP. I don't want to take too much time of you and leave also time for the next panel. Thank you very much for your listening to us and for attending to our panel. And thank you very much to our panelists for joining me for this. Thank you.